is interesting. This is an hour ago on James Comey's Instagram account, his verified account. Take a look at what he just posted on a day that, I don't know, I would imagine was not the best day for him. He posted this picture of him standing next to a large gnome, and it says, Comey's know me. So try to decipher that. I don't know what that means. So we were at the baseball game, and we want to bring you this special moment that we all remember from September when Steve Scalise finally made it back to work to the People's House on his return to Congress last year. Watch this.
On a tragic event and an evil act. To me, all I remember are the thousands of acts of kindness and love and warmth that came out of this and kept me going through all of it. And again, just re-emphasize just how wonderful most people.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. A big news day, maybe a pivotal one. The DOJ released its long-awaited internal review as written by the department's inspector general, and it's packed with information. In a few minutes, Donald Trump Jr. will join us to respond to it. But first, what is in the report? Well, the document is more than 500 pages long, and parts of it are complex. And yet, within minutes of its release, the hairspray geniuses of cable news had it neatly summarized for the rest of us. It was a tough day for the FBI, they said, but here's the bottom line. A months-long investigation found no evidence that political bias played any role in this high-profile criminal investigation. That's almost verbatim what they said on the other channels we watched, and they repeated it nearly word for word at the top of every hour all day long, almost like a talking point, which of course is what it was. Keep this in mind. If you're looking to understand what's actually happening in this country, always assume the opposite of whatever they're telling you on the big news stations. And that's certainly the case here. They're lying. In fact, today's IG report is a virtual catalog of political bias and abuse of power. It is true that investigators found no evidence at all that Jim Comey was trying to sabotage Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. No surprise there. Comey is a partisan Democrat, as he has explained repeatedly on his book tour. The bias, and there was a lot of it, was against Donald Trump and his campaign. And there's an enormous amount of that on display in this report. Trump is a loathsome human, FBI lawyer Lisa Page wrote to her boyfriend, FBI official Peter Strzok. He is an idiot, awful, an enormous douche, a disaster. He simply cannot be president. He's not ever going to become president, right? Right, she wrote to Strzok at one point. No, Strzok replied. No, he won't. We'll stop it. Keep in mind, these are the people running the investigations into Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in the middle of a presidential race. It's almost unbelievable. But you know what's even more unbelievable? Peter Strzok still works at the FBI. The man who promised to stop a presidential candidate from getting elected is still collecting a salary at our most powerful law enforcement agency. If you're looking for evidence of political bias, there you have it. And if you don't believe it, imagine this headline, for example, say 10 years ago. Barack Obama simply cannot become president. We will stop him, wrote FBI agent Peter Strzok, who still works at the Bureau. Can you imagine? No, he'd be fired immediately. First Amendment be damned. And by the way, Strzok and Page were not alone. They're not even the standout cases in this report. The document quotes another FBI attorney wondering, quote, what I could have done differently to stop Donald Trump's election as president. That same official later describes himself as part of the anti-Trump resistance. For some reason, the DOJ is hiding that lawyer's name from the public. We do know he served on the Mueller team until February of this year. Of course he did. And there's a lot more in the report, hundreds of pages of it. It turns out Jim Comey used a personal email account to conduct government business, just like the woman he was in the process of investigating for doing the same thing. Irony alert. Hillary's secret server, by the way, it did indeed have classified information on it, and some of that information was obtained by a foreign intelligence service, at least one. Remember when we suggested that very thing and they scoffed derisively? Well, it turns out it's true, like so much. The report goes on to reveal that FBI agents routinely took bribes from journalists in return for leaking information. People have gone to jail for things like that in Washington, but of course no one at FBI was seriously penalized for it. It goes on like this. The FBI is out of control. The current director, Chris Wray, acknowledged as much today at a press conference. Luckily, Wray has a solution. Going forward, he said, FBI employees will receive professional anti-bias training. Now, that might not make the criminal investigations less corrupt, but it will definitely bring a heightened sense of sensitivity to questions of transgender bathrooms and toxic masculinity. So that might make you feel better. Fox Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has been on this from the very beginning and joins us now with the report. What would you say is the sum of the impression you get of Director Comey from this report, Catherine?
Well, this is the report right here, Tucker, and it's, as you mentioned, over 500 pages long. And the bottom line with Director Comey is that the Inspector General found that he was insubordinate when he made that July 2016 public statement about the Clinton email case, where Director Comey recommended against criminal charges for the mishandling of information. And the Inspector General said that Comey deliberately hid what he was going to say from his boss, the Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and her deputy, Sally Yates. And there was no other way to describe it, but it amounted to insubordination. And I think that's important because for Comey, it's part of his legacy, right? He's done a book about loyalty. He's touring the country, talking about leadership. And this really is sort of a footnote or a bookend on his legacy, Tucker.
One of the headlines of this report, which we just quoted at some length, was the text message from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page, in which he promised we'll stop him. Mr. Strzok still works at the FBI. Has there been any indication of whether there'll be consequences for him?
Right. So what we learned today from the FBI director is that they're going to refer some of the employees for administrative action. And I just want to kind of decode that for you a bit. Administrative action is not criminal prosecution. And for many of these people who are, implicated in the report, they've already left the Bureau. They've retired out. Right. They've just left on their own, or they've been, reassigned. Strzok is still there. And based on what we read in the report today, there seems to be evidence, as you mentioned, of this political bias. And if I could just say one thing, I think it's so important to pay attention to the language in the report. What they say is that they didn't find testimonial or documentary evidence, so no paperwork and no witness testimony, that political bias infected the decisions of the Clinton email campaign investigation, That doesn't mean it didn't happen or it wasn't there, but they're saying they didn't find evidence of it, right? So I think that that's an important distinction.
It is. It certainly is, and thanks for pointing that out. Catherine Herridge, appreciate it.
Yep, see you later. Thanks.
Today's report reveals, as we just said, that if James Comey, no matter what you think of his politics, repeatedly and demonstrably broke protocol and engaged in insubordinate behavior. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, and he joins us tonight. Tom, you make a living filing requests, FOIA requests for government documents. You have a sharp eye for what's been deleted from documents. Are you confident these 500-odd pages are the whole story of the investigation into the Clinton email scandal?
Well, it's the beginning of the story in the least, because obviously there's this connection between Peter Strzok, the Clinton emails, and the Russia investigation, which is yet to be analyzed by the IG. Look, Judicial Watch uncovered the Clinton email scandal, so it's upsetting to see documented evidence of the FBI and DOJ bending over backwards to protect Hillary Clinton and deferring to her on virtually every issue and deciding early on not to prosecute her and just go through the motions of an investigation, despite all the evidence that we had uncovered that she knew what she was doing was inappropriate. She was warned by her national security team and her security team not to do it, and that she did it to avoid disclosure and accountability, all of which goes to the heart of guilt in terms of trying to figure out what her intent was for mishandling classified information and other government documents. It's incredible. I think your viewers need to look at the report themselves. Don't trust the media analysis of it, because the documentation shows a Justice Department that was desperate to protect Hillary Clinton, while at the same time, as these texts indicate, was gearing up to go after Donald Trump at the very same time. So when you compare and contrast what happened with Mrs. Clinton with what was going on with Hillary, with President Trump, or then candidate Trump, these same people were working with the Clinton campaign vendor Fusion GPS to target and spy on the man.
That's an excellent point. We're leading with the subjective analysis, but the data are in this report and worth reading. Thank you. Tom Fitton, good to see you.
You're welcome.
Ron Hosko is the former assistant director of the FBI, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Hosko, thanks a lot for coming. I want to read you an exchange between unnamed FBI employees on election night. I can't stop crying, says one. I am numb, says another. I'm so stressed about what I could have done differently. I think the FBI's influence may have had an effect in this. I don't know. We broke the momentum, meaning the momentum of the Hillary Clinton campaign. So here you have unnamed FBI employees lamenting the fact that they couldn't help a specific political candidate become president. What's your reaction to that?
You know, it kind of sickens me, Tucker. I think those employees, those mentioned in this report, have failed the organization. They've failed the expectation of the highest degree of professionalism. They've let their biases perhaps intersect with an investigation. So it's deeply concerning, and I think Christopher Wray is determined to take some action on that.
I'm confused, though, as to why we don't have a right to know who these people are and what they're doing now. I mean, if you write in an email, and apparently this is real, we broke the momentum, we hurt Hillary, we shouldn't have done that, I'm heartbroken that she lost, don't I have, as a citizen, a right to know what you're doing now? Who are you? Who wrote that? I mean, these are public employees.
Well, they are public employees, but there's also a public process. There's an internal disciplinary process. It sounds as though a number of employees have been referred to that process. And so just like the director said in his press conference today, he's going to hold off on that and follow standing policy until those issues are resolved. Now, we may learn who that is later. Quite clearly, we've seen and heard some of the text messages and IMs back and forth with Strzok and Page. They're very, very concerning. And trust me, the workforce is hurt by that, and they're offended by it.
Yeah, and all the other people who are investigated by Strzok and Page and the rest of these have grounds for reopening cases, I would think. Anyway, Ron Hosko, thank you. Great to see you.
Sure. You too.
Hillary Clinton took to Twitter today to suggest that she was annoyed by the revelations in the IG report, responding to the news that Jim Comey also used a private email to conduct government business. Clinton tweeted this, quote, "But my emails." Richard Goodstein advised both of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns, and he joins us now. Richard, I can, not a Hillary voter, as you know, I can sympathize, actually, with her point that here was Jim Comey investigating her for using private email while using it himself. What's your reaction to that?
Look, Tucker, this whole analysis, in my humble opinion, is twisted. It's perverse. The fact is, Peter Strzok, who's public enemy number one here, could have easily leaked out the fact that Donald Trump was, and people around him were consorting with Russians who claimed they had dirt on Hillary to affect the campaign. And well, that's listen.
Let's
let me tell you what's not embarrassing.
Before you go off into Putin conspiracy land, let me just bring you back to the.
We know that
the
Don Jr. said, "Please love it."
Right, I know he's working for Putin too. Of course,
well,
right, I'm aware of all that. I know where you are on this. Take off the tinfoil hat and respond just to today's IG report, which is really interesting. So we learn that there were, in fact, classified emails on that server, which I think you personally assured our viewers didn't exist, and that, in fact, that server was penetrated by a foreign intelligence service. Hillary Clinton did that. Now, you're gravely concerned about the effect of foreign intel services on our government. Does it bother you that Hillary Clinton, your former boss, allowed that to happen?
So let's talk, if we can, for a second. There are two statutes. When people say, this report says there was nothing prosecutable. People on this network are saying, oh, no, that's a mistake. There are two statutes. One required her intent to disclose classified information.
I'm not calling for prosecution of anybody.
Okay.
I'm actually against most prosecutions. I'm
good.
As a general matter. I'm just saying that we were told by the left, including you, that there was nothing classified on this server and there was no chance that foreign intel agencies broke into it. Both of those things turn out to be untrue. Kind of a big deal, no, since you're worried about foreign penetration of our government, right?
So I'm really worried about the fact that Donald Trump gave classified information to the Russians in the Oval Office after kicking out the U.S. press.
Okay.
That really does disturb me.
Let's not be
well,
demented.
I'm not just trying to say
you've had a chance. No, you've had a chance to explain your concerns about that. But since you're concerned about foreign penetration, does it bother you at all that Hillary Clinton's server, we learned today, was penetrated by a foreign intel service?
What we learned, Tucker, was that what we learned was not that actually the information came from her server, but that there were Hillary Clinton emails that apparently were hacked. We don't know, frankly, whether they went through her server.
Shall I read it to you?
Please do.
This is from the report. Classified information was compromised by unauthorized individuals to include foreign governments or intelligence services via cyber intrusion. Pardon.
Which has nothing, no reference there to her server. Look, she was sending emails all over the place, right through the official channels. So you're laughing. You just read me something that damns your position. There's nothing on there about her server.
I don't have a position. I'm merely repeating what the IG report says, which is she had classified material on the server, as we suggested.
Except it doesn't say about her server. That's my point. Right?
Oh,
I'm sorry. I don't mean to confound you. It's your show. There's nothing about her server that's in that report.
Oh, so okay. So where do you think that information resided?
Well, maybe we could ask people, go to the IG and ask them to find out. But if it was her server, I guarantee you it would have been in there.
Nice try.
If it was
That's where the information sits. It's called a server.
No, because her State Department.
But we're going to have plenty of future opportunities to walk through this much more slowly. Richard Goodstein, great to see you.
Thank you.
For more detail on the IG report dropped today, we are joined by Fox's Trace Gallagher. Hey, Trace.
And Tucker, as expected, Democrats and Republicans had a different read on the IG report, with Democrats saying the FBI's actions helped Donald Trump become president. Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings and Jerry Nadler wrote, quoting here, Director Comey had a double standard. He spoke publicly about the Clinton investigation while keeping secret from the American people the investigation of Donald Trump and Russia. The top Democrat on the House Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, focused on the IG's finding of no political bias. Watch.
Director Comey and others made serious errors of judgment. And while these serious errors of judgment were not driven by political considerations, they were nevertheless serious mistakes.
Republicans strongly disputed the assertion of no bias, pointing to text messages that bear repeating between FBI agents Peter Strzok and his girlfriend Lisa Page, where Page asked whether Trump is going to become president, and Strzok responds, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Here's House Oversight Chair Trey Gowdy. Listen.
Peter Strzok, the FBI agent who was on Hillary Clinton's investigation and arguably the lead Russia investigator, not only wanted to stop his campaign, but once he won, got on the Mueller probe because he wanted to impeach him.
Gowdy went on to call it a level of animus and bias everyone should reject. Tucker.
Trace Gallagher, thanks a lot for that. Today's report is damning. Could it have been worse? Were the original findings softened up prior to release? Congressman Jim Jordan is a Republican who represents Ohio. He just introduced a resolution calling for the DOJ to release more documents on the decision-making at the FBI in 2016, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on.
You bet.
So you suspect this is not all there is?
No, we've been asking for all kinds of documents. We've caught him hiding documents. How about the fact, Tucker, that we've seen all these text messages, thousands. In fact, the Attorney General said there are, I forget, 50,000 text messages between Strzok and Page. But the one most telling was the one that says, we'll stop Trump. We don't see that one till today. So, yeah, they haven't complied with subpoenas from Chairman Goodlatte, subpoenas from Chairman Nunes. We've caught them trying to hide information from us. They kept this text message from us until today. So, of course, we want the information so we can do our job. And the last thing I would say is, just remember, it was a couple days ago that we learned that Rod Rosenstein, who in essence runs the Department of Justice right now, was threatening staff members on the Intelligence Committee. So when you put all that together, of course we need a resolution saying, give us the information so we can do our job and get answers for the American people.
So unidentified FBI lawyer number 2 in this document is quoted lamenting the fact he didn't try harder to get Hillary Clinton elected and bragging about himself as a member of the Trump resistance, anti-Trump resistance. Then he goes to work for Mueller. Why don't I, as a citizen, have a right to know who that is and what he's doing now?
I agree with you. In fact, we tweeted out today, who is lawyer number 2? We want to know, because lawyer number 2, just like Strzok, just like Page, was on the Clinton investigation. He was the lead lawyer, the primary lawyer on the Russia-Trump investigation, and all 3 of those individuals, Tucker, went on the Mueller team. Were obviously subsequently kicked off the team because of this animus they had towards President Trump. But these are 3 key. It's interesting. The 3 people that come over from the FBI to Mueller's team all were on the Clinton investigation, all were on the Russian investigation, and all hated President Trump. That's interesting to me. So, yeah, we need to find out who this individual is and bring him in. Plus, what also is interesting, we'll stop Trump. Remember when this happened? This is a text message from August 8th. So Peter Strzok opens the Trump-Russia investigation on July 31st. 8 days later, we'll stop Trump. 6 days later, we have the text message. We got an insurance policy to make sure President. If that doesn't show where these guys were at, I don't know what does.
It tells you everything. That's exactly right. Congressman, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
A few weeks ago, we learned a lot about how Jim Comey sees himself as a knight of the round table, the last honest man in American politics, really a much better person than you could ever hope to be. And yet today's IG report reveals the true Jim Comey, and it's a very different image. Congressman John Ratcliffe is a Republican, represents Texas, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thank you for coming on.
You bet, Tucker.
Knowing what we know now about Comey, reading this report today, my first thought was, how could Barack Obama have kept this man in place?
Yeah, I think, I think the conclusions of a lot of folks looking at this report today was that Jim Comey was a really, really bad FBI director. And I think that was underscored by the unfortunate spectacle that we just saw his successor, Jim Wray, hold a press conference. Chris Wray hold a press conference where he had to apologize for everything that Jim Comey had done and promised to do better. So, I think that when you look at the errors of judgment, the insubordination, it really, you had the FBI's own umpire, Michael Horowitz, essentially confirm what we've been saying all along, is that in every story, Jim Comey is the star and the hero in the end, but the IG found that that really isn't the case.
Are you confident? Director Wray announced today that the Bureau will be getting professional anti-bias training. Is that going to solve the problem, do you think?
I'm glad that Director Wray held the press conference. I think it's on a very terrible day for the FBI. I think it was the step that he could take. I don't think training, his announcement of training, is going to impress Joe Q. Public, the man on the street. They don't feel better about the FBI or the Department of Justice today than they did before. They certainly have less confidence as Americans in their ability to do the job. He was dealt a difficult hand, again, by Jim Comey's actions as FBI director, and I think it really underscores that even though Barack Obama didn't take the action to remove Jim Comey, it was appropriate for Donald Trump to do that.
Indefensible in retrospect. Congressman, thank you very much.
You bet.
We're going to have continuing coverage of the IG report tonight. We'll talk to a Democrat who thinks the report is not as bad as it looks. Pretty good, actually, he says. Also, Donald Trump Jr. here to respond to what you just heard. We'll be right back. We're continuing our coverage tonight of the bombshell report by the DOJ Inspector General. It exposes rampant misconduct at the FBI. Everyone seems to agree with that. Misconduct by Jim Comey, Peter Strzok, rank-and-file agents who gave reporters information in return for tickets to the Nationals. Not everyone thinks it's such a big deal, though. Julian Epstein serves as counsel to Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us tonight. So, Julian, here you have at least 3 of the central figures in this report who are exhibiting political bias that's so flagrant and over the top that I think even Democrats are shocked by it, who went on to work for the Mueller probe. So you have Strzok and you have Page and you have this as yet unidentified FBI lawyer, the one who said, and we have the text right here, he wished he'd done more to get Hillary Clinton elected. Why should we not be concerned about that?
We should, and that's outrageous, and that's an abuse, and that is a big deal, and nobody should belittle that. You should never have, in the course of any criminal investigation, including into elected officials, somebody that has a bias against any of the targets. I think it's outrageous, and there should be protections put in place. That said, I don't think you should exaggerate the way many people do the significance of that. Peter Strzok was not the person that was going to be making a decision as to whether Hillary Clinton's use of email violated a criminal law. That was way above his pay grade. All of the decisions in Mueller's case, we've had now 20 indictments, 5 guilty pleas, over 100 charges filed. Peter Strzok in none of those cases would have been making the call as to whether to proceed with an indictment or not. I agree line investigators should be free from bias, but I think the power of these individuals is greatly exaggerated. In the Clinton
Peter
case...
Strzok was, hold on, just in point of fact, he was more than a line investigator. He was one of the FBI's chief Russia experts who was quarterbacking a lot of the Russia investigation. And in fact, in this report, it says, in an undercovered part of it, we believe that his political bias may have led him to focus on Russia rather than the Hillary Clinton email investigation. We don't know if that's true, but that's what the IG has determined. My only point is that for weeks and months we've heard that it is somehow unpatriotic to impugn the motive of anyone attached to the Mueller investigation. Here you have 3 people on the investigation who are full-on partisan lunatics who have contempt not just for Trump but his voters. Why should we not be really upset about that?
They have no place in the investigation, particularly with the kind of views they exhibited. But let me remind you, most of the investigation that has been, most of the decisions about and the leadership in the Trump investigation on Russia have been Republicans. Bob Mueller is a Republican. Jim Comey was a Republican. The current Mr. Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, is a Republican.
I'm sorry.
Rosenstein is a Republican.
I just need to correct you. I need to correct you because Comey himself. Hold on. I mean, Comey, I have no idea what Mueller's. First of all, it's irrelevant because there is a civil war in the Republican Party, as you well know, and some of the most virulent anti-Trump people are Republicans. Bill Kristol is a Republican. It's meaningless. No, it's a meaningless distinction. But I would just say that, no, of course it is. I would just say if you flip it around sincerely, well, I know it is. I've been in the right my whole life. It doesn't mean anything. But what does mean something is when you have people who clearly have no self-control and an axe to grind. And why is the left, which used to care about civil liberties, making excuses for this crap? I don't understand it.
I don't think anyone on the left is. I think what the left is saying is that Comey, which is the principal focus of the report, acted inappropriately in a way that hurt Clinton and helped Trump by making the announcement in July of 16 and then in October of 16 about things he shouldn't have been talking about, the decision whether or not to prosecute, things that were all above his pay grade in a way that inured to the benefit of Trump and against Hillary Clinton. That's point one.
Yeah, but I'm not even disagreeing with that. By the way, I've attacked Comey for doing that because I'm not partisan. I don't think he should have done that to Hillary.
And that's fair-minded of you.
Well, but it's true. But I'm just worried about this Russia stuff because it was started by people who thought that Trump should be stopped. And the rest of us should say, whoa, you should never have a criminal investigation run by people who want to achieve political ends by the investigation.
And I agree with that. And I wouldn't differ with that whatsoever. And I don't think people that have a political agenda ought to be anywhere close to an FBI investigation. They've been purged they've been purged from the FBI as they should have been.
They haven't. We don't even know this guy.
Well, these 5 individuals, the 5 individuals in this case have been. And as a matter of fact,
we don't know that. We don't even know their names. Why don't we know their names? Why, I can't be trusted with their names. I pay their salaries.
I think Peter Strzok's going to be fired, and I think the other 5 will clearly be removed.
It should have happened.
So it should have happened before that, but that's not. I mean, there's so much more.
Julian,
in this
I'm sorry to cut you off. We're being. There is a lot more, and I hope you'll come back so we can
we'll
slowly
do it
go through it because it's amazing.
Okay.
Good to see you. Today's report shows that bias at the FBI was far more widespread than just about anybody expected. It is shocking. It's online. Look at it yourself. Don't believe what the other channels are telling you. They're lying. Mark Stein will be here next.
Saturday, January 21st, masses of demonstrators take to the streets, among them the family of James Comey.
My wife and girls marched in the Women's March the day after President Trump's inauguration. At least my 4 daughters, probably all 5 of my kids, wanted Hillary Clinton to be the first woman president. I know my amazing spouse did.
I wanted a woman president really badly, and I supported Hillary Clinton. A lot of my friends worked for her, and I was devastated when she lost.
Today's IG report says there is no evidence that politics played a role in Jim Comey's actions in 2016, and they expect you to believe that because they believe you're stupid. But it is clear a lot of people in his life were deeply hostile to Donald Trump, and now we know the FBI was filled with the same kinds of people. Today's report reveals even more text messages to and from Peter Strzok and his girlfriend Lisa Page, including this damning exchange from August of 2016. Page texted Strzok, quote, "Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right?" Strzok's reply, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Strzok and Page aren't alone either. Thanks to today's report, we know at least one other FBI official was militantly anti-Trump in his outlook. Mark Stein is an author and columnist. He joins us tonight. Mark, of all the many quotes in here are my 2 favorite because they reveal so much about the underlying assumptions of the FBI. So here you have Peter Strzok and to his girlfriend, quote, "Just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support." And then this on election night from an FBI employee. Trump supporters are all poor to middle class, uneducated, lazy pieces of human feces that think he will magically grant them jobs for doing nothing. They probably didn't watch the debates, aren't educated on his policies, and are stupidly wrapped up in his unmerited enthusiasm. These people, these FBI employees, see themselves as members of the ruling class looking down their noses at the country they're supposed to be serving. What does that tell you?
Right. Well, it's absolutely extraordinary. This is the section chief of the FBI's counter-espionage division, and he sounds like some ranting idiot. And what's interesting to me about this is that the bias only goes one way. You can bet that if there had been one single email from any FBI or Department of Justice figure saying, "Oh, you know, yeah, I'm a bit sick of Hillary. I hope Trump wins on November," they would have put that in.
Exactly.
There isn't a single email here from any of these so-called policemen expressing anything other than not just the normal preference that people have for Democrats or Republicans, but in fact hyper-partisan fervor that is actually preventing them from acting as policemen. And that's what's extraordinary about it. I mean, I fell off my chair laughing. I mean, maybe it's because, as you can see, I'm in a sinister foreign country tonight, Tucker. I'm not like Sean Hannity just hanging out in Singapore. I'm in America's sworn enemy, the Dominion of Canada. We're going to come down and relaunch the War of 1812. So it
Lots of luck.
No, me and Justin have been planning it. We were shocked by the Inspector General's report. Justin's other eyebrow fell off, and he says we got to go down there and burn the White House all over again. So
it's going to be a very tough pillow fight.
That's right. So what is Christopher Wray today at his press conference when he was asked why hasn't he fired Peter Strzok, said, "Oh, well, we're going to do this by the book." What this report shows is that there is no book. You have the director of the FBI who thinks that he's not only the investigative detective, but he's also the prosecutor and the judge. That's not a small mistake. That's devastating. Then you have people like Strzok who are investigating a crime, the crime of doing government work on personal email servers, and even as they're investigating that, they're doing government work on email servers. You have the most lavishly funded police agency in the world, and the director is the only guy in Washington who doesn't know that Anthony Weiner is married to Huma Abedin. That's absolutely extraordinary. The reason he sits on the Anthony Weiner pedophile laptop for a month is that I had no idea she was married to Huma Abedin. Is this widely known? Is it in the papers? They were married by Bill Clinton. You're the FBI director. This is why don't you just you know, as I said, we're going to come down and relaunch the War of 1812. You should have the budget. They should be reduced to the budget of some Moose Jaw police department, and then they might be able to figure out whether who Huma Abedin's married to.
The great Mark Steyn, improved even by your presence in Canada. You're helping that country just by being there. Mark Steyn, great to see you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker. Thank you.
Donald Trump Jr. joins us next to discuss the IG report and the new lawsuit by the Attorney General of the state of New York against the Trump Foundation, announced today. We'll be right back. The left wasn't going to let today's IG report go unanswered. So earlier today, New York Attorney General Barbara Underwood announced a new lawsuit against the Trump Foundation in New York. The suit seeks to dissolve the organization and ban Trump, as well as his 3 children, from serving on any nonprofit. Donald Trump Jr. is one of the people targeted by that lawsuit, and he joins us tonight. Donald Trump Jr., thanks a lot for joining us.
Good to be with you, Tucker. How are you?
So I'm doing great. So before I ask you about the suit against the nonprofit, let me get your take on the Inspector General report you've seen today.
Well, listen, it's pretty incredible. And obviously, I look at the Inspector General sort of as like HR at a major corporation, right? They're not really there to protect the individuals. They're there to protect the corporation. So as damning as it was, it probably doesn't go far enough as it relates to what was really going on. But I think real America, and what I've been saying for weeks, and last time I was on with you,
real America sees what's going on here. They see that these phony players at the top of the FBI, not the rank and file, not the boots on the ground, it's the guys that are doing the real work. They said that these lawyers that never went through those things, that never started down at the bottom, these lawyers at the top were trying to influence an election and then undermine a presidency. I look at James Comey, it's like the liberal version of a sorority sister. Like, it's pretty ridiculous at this point. And when I see what's going on, I think I see what everyone else in America is seeing, and they should be disgusted.
If you were a right-of-center person, not you specifically, but any person, and you were caught up in an FBI investigation, wouldn't you want to know that the man identified as FBI lawyer number 2 wasn't on your investigation?
I would think that'd be kind of important.
So why don't we know his name, and why shouldn't we know his name?
You know, that's what I don't understand. I mean, all of this stuff going on, when you look at the stuff, and I've talked about it with you on your show, the stuff I've gone through over the last 18 months, whether it be about the Russia investigation, it's the biggest deal in the world. 25 hours of testimony in front of Congress. Hillary Clinton does 10 for Benghazi, and guess what? When she and the DNC team up to pay a foreign agent to work with Russia to compile a fake dossier and spend millions of dollars to do this thing, all of which has been debunked, none of it proven, chasing this thing for 2 years, nothing. Literally nothing happens. So I think it just shows the flagrant double standard. If you were even center, let alone right of center, you'd be getting the same thing. But if you're the uber left, you can get away with and do with whatever you want because there's no accountability there. And I think real people, again, are starting to see it, and they should be disgusted.
So the new Attorney General of New York today announced a suit against the Clinton Foundation for influence peddling. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Against the Trump Foundation.
Yes.
Right. And you're named in it.
Of course.
What's your reaction to that?
Listen, it's nonsense. In the end, you know, this is a charitable thing that was funded 50% by my father's own money to go into good deeds. It's something that Eric Schneiderman, before he went down a ball of flames as one of the leaders of the original Me Too movement, was working on for years. Where is he right now? He couldn't follow through, so they do this on the day that the IG report's going to be able to dominate the news cycle. And guess what? Most of the media will carry their baggage. They'll run with it as though it's this big deal of a thing, and it really isn't. What's really ridiculous is that this is money that went to good and charitable causes, half of which was funded by this, had a 0% expense ratio. It didn't have employees, wasn't sending people on G5s all over the world like the Clinton Foundation at 90%. I believe they had 90% expense ratio. You know, that's the standard and the double standard by which we have to live. And we'll keep doing that, and we'll keep fighting. We'll do what we'll have to do. But I think what my father's doing is he's doing an amazing job in Washington, D.C. He's showing this flagrant double standard. He's highlighting it to the people. They're seeing it. They're fed up. And they're watching him win, despite all of the noise, despite all of the obstruction, despite all of the hysteria about anything that Donald Trump does. I mean, I'm watching the last week, coming back from Singapore, I'm watching all these people. There are people on the left, I almost feel as though they were hoping for a nuclear war, because then they could say, see, Trump failed. It's really ridiculous, Tucker, and it's gone too far.
So just to go back to the suit, I just want to get my head around it. Is the implication or the claim that you got rich, because you're named in it, that you got rich by your affiliation with the nonprofit? Did you get rich?
I'm not even sure what the claim is. I think the claim is that there's somehow mismanagement, but in the end, there were no salaries paid. There is no expense travel. There are no, paid members of this thing. We're sitting there as essentially a board to see that the money that he's putting in there is going out to other charitable causes. That's all it is. This isn't the Clinton Foundation where they're taking money from foreign governments who are then giving it to their friends to fly around on G5s for projects that never materialize. It's really a lot different. You can see the list of all the charities that I went to. Half of them are veterans charities.
But just to be clear, you did not take a salary from this nonprofit?
I've never taken a cent from it, no. Neither did my brother, neither did my sister, neither did my father.
Huh. So I'm even more confused.
Yeah, as am I, but we're used to it by now.
Good luck with that.
Yeah,
thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Tucker. Thank you very much, man.
Thanks. More coverage on the IG report and its long-term fallout after the break. We'll be right back. We continue our coverage of today's blockbuster IG report out of the Department of Justice. A lot was revealed, but what are the most important takeaways? Byron New York writes to the Washington Examiner. We think he's one of the most sober and fact-based correspondents we have on the show, and so we trust him to answer that question. Byron, what do you think the most important takeaways from this report are?
Well, you know, a lot of people in the past few weeks were disappointed when they were told that this IG report would concern the Clinton email investigation and not the Trump-Russia investigation. Well, what we found out today is that it's really kind of both. This report is kind of the prequel to the Trump-Russia report, because there's one on the way, or if you will, it's volume 1 in a 2-volume history of these politicized FBI investigations. And I think the biggest point about this is that political bias just infected this entire investigative process beyond Peter Strzok, who certainly plays a starring role in that, but to include other people who played key roles in both of those investigations. Remember, when the Trump-Russia investigation began, they simply chose the same cast of characters as those who had been in the Clinton email investigation.
That is exactly right. They are tied together. I wish we had more time, Byron, but I know that you'll be back to further unpack this for us. Great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
We'll be back right after the break.